John the other recently made a good video. No, I am not cutting to the famous clip of Kitty from that 70s show, laughing. The video was short and simple. And I am only going to show very brief clips since he just came out with the video. I figure it would be rude to end up showing it in its entirety before everyone has had a chance to watch it on his channel.
But the continued relevance of that seemingly redundant assertion that all men are men is that whichever side of the gender ideological debate we begin from, there are men judged and condemned to be, in some sense, not real men.
This is something I have noticed, and something I dislike, in spite of being guilty of doing it myself. The idea that a man must do a certain thing, or be a certain way, or he gets his masculinity card taken from him, I believe is a detrimental attitude. Men have been conditioned to respond to allegations of being unmanly. He takes a false pride in manhood. And I'm not saying men should feel ashamed of their manliness, or be ashamed to be male, but the pride in it is often what gets him easily jerked around. It's like the cult of maleness, where every man has to conform to something or he gets his cult membership revoked, and is thus no longer a real man.
Mangina is just one example of such condemnation. From the opposite side of the aisle, we have the initials MRA, used as a pretty common shorthand for shrunken penis, mother's basement dwelling, can't get laid, bitter, angry, misogynist, loser with anger issues. And with the growth of factions within the broader manosphere, dehumanizing rhetoric is also manifesting between competing schools of thought among activists and commentators. Men going their own way are rebranded pigs going their own way.
This is true. As the men's movement grows, there are competing ideas of what is good for men, and what the cause of male distress is. These different factions will then attempt to either take away each other's man card, or paint them as mentally defective, or evil, and yes, I am guilty of this too. I believe this can have a very detrimental effect on the manosphere. Consider how many people are newcomers to the movement, do not understand the terminology, have not been presented that red pill in a proper way, and are due to ignorance of these arguments and the history of these factions. Tradcans, MRAs, PUAs, MGTOW, really ought to just be considered fence-sitters, and here the different factions are competing not only with logical arguments, but with degrading, accusatory, and dehumanizing language, and of course, threats of taking away each other's precious man card. Furthermore, I would like to add that someone once told me, when was the last time getting called stupid ever changed your mind about something? So I don't think dehumanizing language helps fence-sitters to see our side of things.
Of feminism, we see male feminists as particularly wrong-headed. These guys are still men, simply following an ideology that we find objectionable. In fact, the common practice among men's advocates to insult and to devalue male feminists has no positive impact on those men except to further reinforce their commitment to the ideology which devalues them by their own sexual identities.
So what you're saying is, MRA's attacking the character of the male feminist only drives him farther into the arms of feminists? Well, there is a certain truth to that. Some men who are male feminists are embracing feminism because of their perception that feminism is challenging the toxic masculinity that has terrorized them. Many of them are victims of bullying, something like being raised in a home where father's heavy hand rules the family. That person may be susceptible to an ideology that claims to be putting an end to a rule by fathers. However, male domestic violence, in the single-parent mom era of Western culture, makes this unlikely. But then you have the schoolyard bullying, getting roughed up by some macho men on a regular basis, being verbally bullied and called faggot, unmanly, or a girl, and then they hear feminists talking about the need to fight toxic masculinity. Men who are bullied by the jocks and the dude bros, are going to run to the proverbial bosom of the collective of women. The feminists shaming male behavior. One of the first complaints a young male will make about feminism is that feminists are trying to castrate them, emasculate them, take away their manliness, and this is more or less accurate. If we go back to Freud, girls realize at a certain age that they lack a penis, and thus they envy the penis. At the same time in development, males realize they have a penis and girls do not, and thus they fear having their penis removed. Girls envy the penis and wish to take it away from men. Men glorify their penis and fear it being taken from them. The desire to strip men of male behavior is based on the subconscious desire to strip a man of his penis. The male reaction to feminism being they're trying to neuter us men is indeed the metaphorical holding one's crotch and yelling "don't cut off my penis." But enough of the Freudian stuff. Feminism does seek to attack masculinity. Males who suffered from abuse at the hands of other males are ripe to be inducted into the cult of feminism. Oh, and remember the cult of maleness I talked about? Yeah, that cult is just the brotherhood of the penis, calling each other Mangina, or other language expressing, not a real man, is emasculating language. It hurts men because it is coming after their dicks with a pair of scissors. Toxic masculinity, schoolyard bullying and accusations of being homosexual, can push some men into the arms of feminism. Having the same men turn around and call them faggot, mangina, unmanly, isn't going to get them to abandon their newly found allegiance to feminism, which seeks to rid males of their toxic manliness. Many male feminists despise masculinity.
Men trapped in the toxic spiral of having their public identities controlled by the female acolytes of a male-hating ideology need to step out of that hamster wheel of shame and fear, and they have to do it by choice.
You've stated before in one or more videos, men getting their identity as good men from women drives their motivation, and while that may be true for some men, I don't think it is the bulk of what male feminists are about, but I'll get into that in a moment.
The male feminist is a male feminist because he is controlled by fear. It's a fear of loss of his status as a good man, amplified by the reality that he knows that those who own his public identity are immature, vindictive, and trained to find fault in even the most benign expression or conduct.
But let's take that a step further. I have not met one male feminist who, in addition to being anti-male, wasn't also anti-white. We have white guilt, and we have male guilt. Male guilt is a male feminist, and I think it is more than coincidence that men with male guilt also have white guilt, or even if not being white, have extreme contempt for white people. I'll go one step further. They also have wealth guilt. I'm just going to spell it out for you. The male feminist is a cultural Marxist, and the psychological mechanisms go beyond wanting to be a good man in the eyes of women. Cultural Marxism, that staple of the left-wing extreme, is one that is based on resentment. They resent the privileged, or at least what they perceive to be the privileged. The established cultural Marxism, which is the heart of the social sciences, teaches a dichotomy of the oppressed and the oppressor class. Everyone is governed by such emotions as hate, fear, resentment, desire, ego, etc. The right wing is based on fear, the left wing is based on resentment. Even if people on both sides of the spectrum have the full range of emotions, there is one focal point that is the foundation of their politics: fear on the right, resentment on the left. The male feminist, who is in fact just a cultural Marxist, is resentful more than he is fearful. Now we could split hairs and argue that even resentment is rooted in fear, but let's not split hairs and go that far. The male feminist is not, as you say, motivated by fear. He is motivated by resentment. He resents the masculine males that bully him. He is resentful of the unfair burdens of masculinity bestowed upon him by society, and sees feminism as the liberator willing to take that burden off his shoulders, and punish the toxic masculine bullies who rejected him. Alienation is why the male feminist is the cultural Marxist that he is. Alienation divorces a human from their allegiance to their nation, to their nation's religion, to their race, to their sex, and to everything home and familiar. Oikophobia. I will most certainly agree, though, the male feminist is looking for acceptance. He is the alienated, which made him resentful. There is, however, more to this. The resentment-driven cultural Marxist is only one type, the other is the conformist. In World War II, an extreme propaganda war was fought all throughout the West. When the war was over, Hitler was deified, given the persona of Satan. All evil is now that which is like Hitler. The hallmark of Hitler's evil is intolerance. The resentful cultural Marxists in this climate were able to take over academia. They fought for the blacks and the Jews and the gays and the immigrants and the Muslims, under the banner of tolerance. Anyone that challenged them was called intolerant, just like Hitler, and reminded how 6 million Jews were killed because of intolerance, and our nation's soldiers, our fathers, fought against that sort of evil. The culture was ripe for the resentful cultural Marxist. They took over academia, particularly the social sciences, which is connected to things like communications degrees, and our media became run by these people by the mid-1970s. Today, a good human, not just a good man, is a person conforming to the religion of tolerance. If you are non-male, non-white, non-heterosexual, non-native born, you need not show tolerance, because you are the oppressed class. It is the designated oppressor class that must show tolerance or be socially isolated, and by show tolerance I mean show disdain for the oppressor class that he happens to be a part of. That is, self-guilt, and the mongering of guilt, the expectation that people of his likeness show their guilt, which all rather resembles Catholic confession. But to remove the partisan politics, to remove the cultural environment from the equation, the psychological motivation for the male feminist is he felt alienated, and became resentful. or he feared alienation and thus parroted the proper and popular resentment. Considering how many women declare loudly they want a real man and not some little bitch, I doubt being full of male guilt is a strategy to get laid. I doubt marching under a banner that gets you labeled a faggot or a sissy is what men do to earn women's affection. And when it's all the bad boys who get the girls, I seriously doubt obtaining sex and relationships with women is the goal of being a male feminist. Good man, as you put it, I believe it is alienation, harassment, bullying, from other men, that causes them to despise certain aspects of masculinity, that makes them susceptible to feminism, and it's being alienated or marginalized in general, that leads to the cultural Marxism, the sentiment of give me what I feel I'm owed, you oppressive cheating privileged shithead. But then there are the fence-sitters, those who do not loudly proclaim to be male feminists, but who would not dare risk alienation by speaking out against the movement that says women are people, and there is an argument for demonizing them, threatening to take away their man card. Women want real men, not little bitches, and these men are ruled by that fear. They want female approval, which on one hand means not shitting on the women are people movement, and yet they mustn't look like a bitch in the eyes of women. They also want male social acceptance, and being a male feminist is like coming at your fellow man's crotch with a large pair of scissors. They are conflicted, so there is an argument for and against dehumanizing our opponents. If the goal is to convert the male feminist to our side, I am going to tell you now, converting them is a waste of time. Not saying it's wrong to try, but it's a waste of time. They, psychologically, down to the core of who they are running on resentment. They have an identity, they have a worldview that is deeper than feminism itself. When you claim you are against feminism, he immediately knows you are one of them, the enemy. You are his scapegoat, you are his enemy. You threaten his identity, you threaten the crutches he uses to empower himself as a victim who is owed something. His crutch is his new penis, and he fears you coming to take it away. You are the privileged, the oppressor. It's your fault. He's the victim of you, and his stance as a victim is invincible. Lest you take away the crutch, the intellectual pretense for his beliefs, which he will not let you do, because it is vital to his sense of self and worldview. I say the male feminist, being just a cultural Marxist, is beyond saving, but the faker, the poser, the fence-sitter, the guy who just doesn't want to piss on a movement of women are people too, he can be reached. He is not a male feminist, he is not a cultural Marxist, he is a fence-sitter. The fence-sitter is the one who when handed the red pill screams not all women are like that. He knows, on some level, that feminism is toxic to him, but he needs female approval. Not all women are like that. He will say, these men are susceptible to the MRA message, but not to MGTOW. Baby steps, I say, baby steps. First he will learn to hate feminism, then he will learn to embrace anti-feminism, which will unfortunately tell him feminism is why women don't give you the love and sex you think you are entitled to, and it's all the fault of Marxism, because, as you know, not all women are like that, and we can make them good again, like they were in the past, like the old black and white movies claim they were at least. He will get a distorted view of the situation, but be one step closer to self-actualization, the awakening. He will eventually swallow the red pill, he will get it, and what he does from there is anyone's guess. But I will say, it is perhaps better that we put aside our dehumanizing of different male factions within the manosphere, and as MGTOW, it might be nice if we quit threatening to take away men's man card. I often do this, mostly subconsciously, because I know I am talking to and about blue pillars, those men who still wave around their man card like a badge of honor, rather than this is what I happen to be. The slightest poke to the male ego instantly provokes these people. But perhaps I shouldn't, perhaps it gives a toxic license to MGTOW,